Now, Professor Dr. Oldenkamp, because that's your real title, isn't it? Was Professor of Knowledge Transfer, Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Stenden University of Applied Sciences. In the autumn of 2008, he consciously resigned. So he, again, has made some serious choices with his life and devoted all his time to energy and savings to the future development of holy science. So that's worth looking into. I'm sure you'll quote where they can have a look at that sort of thing. Johan in 2011 discovered that the 11 Giza pyramids together with the Great Sphinx represent the third dimension of our time. So this again is going to be an interesting one in regard to the Giza clock. He's going to show that overall human consciousness is affected by the great year cycle of Sirius. Why so serious? From gold, silver, bronze, and iron backed. He's travelled from the Netherlands, so please give him a really warm welcome. Johan, you have the stage.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary. Question first off, who is still riding the wave, or who is submerged in too many alternative views at the moment? You still good to go? Okay, now that's what we'll do. Yeah, we're going to talk about the pyramids from the Giza plateau in Egypt. Here you can see them. Here's the Great Sphinx. This is my website, by the way, plateau.nl. If you want to find out more about my work in holy science, you can visit it, multilingual. What is time? Yeah, I start talking about time. What is the time of day at the moment? Yeah, we started at 9. Everybody was fresh. It's now, 4:30 p.m. Not so fresh anymore, if I correct. Yeah, but there's also another way of measuring time, and that's our calendar. Yeah, it's May 26th today. These two dimensions are very well. And what I want to do is to show the dynamics and what we know of time, and then use that to understand the third dimension of time, as Carrie already announced. And the way we measure time, or the way we handle time, is linear. It's a one-dimensional line, and the time is increasing over and over and over again. But in the way we have defined time, there are actually 3 levels, as you can say. So we can zoom in on time, and we can zoom in again, and we can zoom in for a third time. And this is all very meaningful, and it's also, right in front of us, but hardly anyone is really aware of this. Yeah, for instance, when we look at the clock, do we see the 3? Only if you have the seconds counting, the third, we call it the second hand, the third hand, then you have the 3 hands. And when you look at the calendar, you also have 3. You have a year, you have a month, and you have the days. So both are sort of trinities. And they are very similar, because the first one, the biggest one, is related to this heavenly body. Yeah, the star in the middle of our solar system. I call it Helios, Helios. Yeah, some call it simply Sun. And the small hand here, that's the hand of Helios. That's the solar hand, if you like. And every year we put another number here, a higher number, because we count the orbits we make around the Sun. So the biggest magnifying glass is the Sun. The second one, the second hand here, is called minutes. And minutes comes from min. And min is a reference to the moon. So the second hand is actually the moon hand. The first hand is the sun hand. The second is the moon hand. And that's why we have also 12 units of time we call months. But month is from moonth. Yeah, so it's a period of a moon cycle, a lunar cycle, from new moon to the next new moon. But it's a little bit longer because it doesn't fit exactly within a year. And then we have also the days of the week. And they are named after these heavenly bodies. Yeah, we all know what day of the week it is today, I hope. It's Sunday today. Yeah, we all agree? So it's the day of the sun. Yeah, we honor the sun today. And tomorrow we honor moon. Monday is moon day, the day of the moon. And then we go to Tuesday. Which heavenly body do we honor on Tuesday? No, it's not Thor. It's Tyr. Tyr. In Germanic mythology is the god Tyr, and Tyr's day became Tuesday. Yeah, so it's indeed Mars. Yeah, in French we say mardi. It's the day of Mars. Then we go to Wednesday. Yeah, so this is Mars, this is Tuesday. When we go to Wednesday, it's this one. Yeah, it's actually Wodan's day. And Wodan became in English Wednesday. Yeah, that's why we write it a little bit differently. Wednesday. We write Wednesday, but it's Wodan's day actually. And then we have Thor, or Thur. Thor's day is Thursday. Yeah, Jupiter. And Freya's day became Friday. And the most easiest in English is simply put an N after Saturn. Saturn day. It's the day of Saturn. So that's why we honor these 7 deities, these 7 gods, yeah, by the days of the week. And that cycle of weekdays continues every 7 days. So this is how we measure time. Yeah, so the third hand is the hand of the seconds. And who is second? Counted from inwards. Yeah, we have the solar star in the middle, Helios, the sun. And who is second? Mercury. Yeah, Mercury goes around the sun. Yeah, it's the shortest orbit. So Mercury is second. And so this is the hand of Mercury, the second hand, the second's hand. But time is not really linear. Time has 2 dimensions. And that's why it is actually a wave. That's why I like the title of this conference so much, because time is indeed a wave. It goes up and it goes down and it goes up again. And we see that in the daily time, but also in the yearly time. Yeah, we see here the orbit of the sun, but then in a yearly time depicted. How high is the sun climbing at noon? Yeah, that varies in the year time. But you can also see it as a kind of daily time as well. So both are here present. And the moment here in the middle of the highlight of the sine wave, that's called in Latin meridiem, yeah, middle of the day. But a day is not a 24-hour period. A day is only the light half of a 24 period. Yeah, in Dutch, my native tongue is Dutch. In Dutch, we have a special word for that. In English, there is no word. Yeah, we can say natural day, but we mean the whole cycle. So the whole cycle is named a day, but actually only this part is a day, and this part is a night. So we have the midday, the meridiem, and this part is then after the midday period, post-meridiem, PM. And the other part is in front of it, ante, AM. And the same, we have a midnight period. So midnight and midday are actually moments in time. Yeah, not a whole phase, but just a moment. Midnight is the deepest part, and midday is the highest part. And we have the same systematics in a yearly time. What is the name of this room? This hall? No one paid attention? What is the name of this boulevard in front of this? Midsummer. It's the Midsummer Boulevard, the Midsummer Hall we're in. So midsummer is also a moment. Yeah, in the old days it was feasted. It was a festival, the Midsummer Festival. And the same happened in the midwinter. So midwinter is not in the middle of the season of the winter, as most people think. No, it's in the middle of the darker half of the year. And that was used to be called a winter time. So we have a summer and a winter time, 2 half years. But now we use summer and winter for seasons, and that can be a little bit confusing. We're going to talk now about the third dimension of time, and there is another huge star involved in that. Yeah, so as I showed The first two dimensions are all about our own star, but there is a neighboring star very important for our life on this planet, and this is called Sirius. Yeah, she is about twice as big in diameter, but she gives more than 20 times more light, yeah, luminance. This is my favorite constellation, star constellation of Orion, and if you take the Orion's belt and you take a line down from the upper two stars in the belt, you arrive at a very bright star. That's the star Sirius. And Sirius is the brightest star in the night sky, but not necessarily the brightest light. Yeah, of course, the moon is more brighter when she's full, but also Venus, when she reflects sunlight, is much more brighter than Sirius. But Venus is only reflecting sunlight, while Sirius is emitting her own light. That's a big difference. So we have 3 dimensions of time, and we can easily make that with our fingers, pointing in 3 directions. First dimension is daily time, and we all know that. And that's because our own planet is rotating around our own axis. Yeah, that's why we have sunrise until sunset and so on. Second dimension is also very familiar, because the second dimension, as I said, is the yearly time. And the yearly time is caused by our own, you can say, travel around the central star. But that's not how we perceive it. We perceive it from our own spaceship. Yeah, we perceive it while being on the surface of this planet, and we see the sun traveling in front of the 12 zodiac signs. So we see the sun traveling, but in reality, we are doing the traveling. Just as here, we see the sun come up in the east and go down in the west, but it's just us. We go around our own axis. The sun is relatively standing still to us. So what is then the third dimension? The third dimension has to do with the rotational axis of our home planet, I call Terra. And at the moment, this axis is pointing to a star, in the smaller bear, the Polaris, the pole star. But in 13,000 years' time from now, it will be a totally different star, now somewhere in the west. The Lyra system, the star Vega. So you can call this the North Pole precession cycle, if you like. And it's going the other way around. It's a precession. It's going in the opposite direction as this cycle. So I want to talk about this in relation to the pyramids on the Giza plateau. And Plato, his name has already been mentioned a couple of times, he called it the great yearly time. Because yearly time lasts 365 and about a quarter times longer than daily time. But great yearly time lasts about 26,000 times longer than yearly time. So it's a huge difference. And all three, they have a sine wave. So also in the great yearly time, we will see a sine wave. And it has everything to do with the dance of our sun, Helios, and Sirius. They are making this beautiful dance. So they come together and they go further apart. And they come together and further apart. And the full cycle of this dance lasts about, as I said, 26,000 years. At the moment it is about like this. Here is our sun, Helios, there is Sirius, and the line between them always goes right in the middle of this overlapping. So here, the line wherever they are is always going through this point. And we make an orbit around Helios. Our calendar starts at January 1. Why is that? You would say, why not start at, let's say, March 21, when the spring starts? That would be more logical. No, we started January 1 because that's the alignment with Sirius. When it is January 1, we are exactly in between Helios on one side and Sirius on the other. So when you look up around 12, before the fireworks starts, you will see the bright star of Sirius in the night sky at the same spot as where the sun is during the daytime at the noon period. And in ancient Egypt, she was, personified as this god, this deity, and her name was Sopdet. Yeah, so the star on our head refers to this star. Yeah, this is actually a personification, if you like, of Sirius. And that name refers to the red star. And it has everything to do with the phenomenon of redshift. Yeah, we all know when an ambulance or a police car is driving away from us, it sounds different than when it's coming towards us. Yeah, because the velocity of the vehicle is subtracted or added to the sound. Yeah, the frequency of the sound. And when Sirius was called the red star, she was about here. She was in a redshift phase, redshift period. But now she's no longer there. Now she is in the blue shift phase, yeah, because she's now here. So now she is coming towards us. Yeah, Sirius is coming closer and closer. When you go to old textbook, you see the distance between Sirius and our world, our planet, is about 8.8 light years. Yeah, about 200 years ago. And then it became 8.7. And now when you look it up on Wikipedia, you will find 8.6. So Sirius is indeed getting closer. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because she's getting closer and closer towards us. Not in a linear way, but in a circular way. And when she's further apart, the distance is about 9 light years. So when she's here, then our planet, our sun is there, and then they are furthest apart. But when our sun is here, then Sirius is there. And then the distance is only 3 light years. Yeah, that's still a lot. If you have to travel with speed of light, it takes still 3 years to get there. But it is, yeah, 1/3 of the distance there. So she's already now the brightest star in the night sky, but she will then be, yeah, at least 3 times as bright and maybe even more. Some say she will have more light than a full moon. Can you imagine? A very bright star that gives more light than a full moon. Yeah, full moon gives shadows on the ground. There will be more lightness, more light in darkness. Yeah, so let's go back in time. This is, yeah, I cannot read it there, neither here, but this is 149 before our current era. Yeah, this was the moment when they were furthest apart. And this is the highlight of the Iron Age. Yeah, the Kali Yuga in the Veda scriptures. So that was Iron, and Iron means it's low. Yeah, it's the lowest. I'm not talking about the Iron Age and the Bronze Age of scientism. Yeah, academic science is not really science, it's a belief system called scientism in my book. I'm talking about the eras or the aeons or the ages. Yeah, you can use it, you can use any term you want. But these epochs, they are important for us because they have influence on our general consciousness. That's why it's so important to know this third dimension of time. We're about here at the moment, yeah, a little bit further actually. Because in 2012, according to my understanding, we entered a new time frame, a new era. Yeah, the Dvapara Yuga, meaning the Bronze Age. And that means that we enter the same kind of energy as, for instance, ancient Egypt and ancient Sumer. And we will start to understand what they understood. Yeah, we thought that they were obsessed with afterlife. No, they understood that what this is, what we are doing right now, our lives, is the before life. The before life is important for what happens afterwards. And that's why they were focusing on, preparing for what is coming next, the real thing. This is just a preparation phase. Yeah, so that's coming back to us, I think. Then when we even get closer, we enter the next age, and that is the Silver Age. Yeah, when you go to the Olympics, you get a bronze medal. Well, that's already really good, but if you get a silver, it's much better. You're the runner-up. And of course, when you get even further closer from this moment on, this is when we enter the Golden Age, Age of Gold. Yeah, the Satya Yuga. What do we know from this period? Well, hardly anything. We only know about the last 5,000 years. We have written documents that go back about 5,000 years. What happened before, we don't know. Yeah, as human beings, we are maybe 200,000 years on this planet. Yeah, who knows? But we only know a very small bit of it. Yeah, we have amnesia on a gigantic scale. We lost a lot of information. So maybe this was Atlantis. Maybe we had a very high developed culture based on a much higher consciousness than what we can comprehend at the moment. I think that's true. So then, after we get out of the Iron Age, the Golden Age, we come back to the Silver Age. And after the Silver Age, we go back to the Bronze Age. And finally, we end up again in the Iron Age. That's the cycle. So it's not as the seasons. It's not spring, summer, autumn, winter. No, it's 4 and then 4 back again. And there is a so-called primitive people, tribe, living nowadays in Mali. They knew a lot about Sirius. That was really remarkable. They knew so many facts that were not known at the day. They were encountered by Robert Temple. I will come back to that. Yeah, what here is on their heads is called a kanaga, and it represents actually a unit of 6. Yeah, the number 6 is very important. When you go back to ancient Sumer, they were counting in multiples of 6 and 10s. And that's what this represents. Each end is a 10, and 6 times 10 is a 60. And the Dogon people, they celebrate this festival, the festival of the Sigui, every 60 years. For a very long time. It's in the Guinness Book of Records. You can look it up for yourself. The longest held ceremony, as far as we know. It goes back to many, many years. Yeah, thousands of years. Every 60 years they celebrate this. Why? What is so important about 60? Robert Temple, he was living in the UK, but he was born in the USA. He encountered them in 1967, and he was fascinated by the things he learned from them. Yeah, they said there were 4 big moons around Jupiter. How could they know? That's not visible with the naked eye. They knew that. They knew there were rings around Saturn. How did they know that? And they knew a lot about Sirius. They said there's not 1 star, now there are actually 3 stars. I'll come back to that. So these so-called primitive people apparently were in touch with ancient knowledge. Yeah, they claim they were visited here from another world, another planet. Yeah, and 6 is still important. When you buy eggs, for instance, you buy a dozen. It's 12. Yeah, I showed the clock, 12 hours. The zodiac, 12 signs. What is so important about 6? Maybe it all helps us to remember these people. Yeah, and the great year is divided in 12 periods of 6 times 6 times 6 times 10 years. 6 to the power 3 is 260, times 10 is 2160 years. And that times 12 is 25,920 years. That's the cycle, the great year cycle. So this is the brightest sky in the night, Sirius. But next to her, there is a smaller star. Yeah, we cannot see it with the naked eye, but with a telescope, it's indeed true. This is what is described nowadays by astrophysics, astronomy. But this is what the Dogon drew. And you can look it up on Wikipedia. Wikipedia is trying to downplay this, but to me, it's very similar. So how can they know that? Yeah, so most of the time, the smaller star is now called Sirius B, is on the left-hand side. It's for a short period on the other side, and then it's for a longer time again on the other side. Yeah, just as here. Here they are, then it goes to the other side, and it comes back to here. Yeah, I will not go into the details, but to me it's astonishing that they have this knowledge so accurately. Because this is the cycle. Yeah, the black dots here, this is Sirius B. Yeah, this is Sirius A. This was in 1950. And in 50-year times, this is the apparent orbit of Sirius B around Sirius A. Yeah. Here you see 1999. So 2000, again, it was here at the same spot as where it was in 1950. So the cycle of B around A lasts about 50 years. But why do they celebrate the festival every 60 years? 50 would be more sensible. That's true from our perspective, from our world scene, but not seen from the other world. Yeah, this star is called the dog star. It's in the chest, if you like, of the great dog, Canis Major. Yeah, so it's here. But actually there are 2 stars, or even 3. So this is Sirius B, this is Sirius A. Sirius B goes around Sirius A, but Sirius A herself is not standing still either. She's also making an orbit. And that orbit has to do with a 3rd star, which is no longer emitting light. But the Dogon called this star, the 3rd one, Emaya, female sorghum. Yeah, it's a kind of wheat, now fed to animals. So maybe this is the star that gives the energy to both. Who knows? Yeah, they call this Sigi Tolo. Yeah, the small Sigi Polo, sorry, the small seed star, and this was called Sigi Tolo. Yeah, the star of the Sigui. I think there used to be a planet orbiting Sirius C, because we can call this Sirius C. And that planet is named Xilantia, according to the Dogon. And I relate that to the planet Tiamat. Yeah, I will not go into that. That will be too time-consuming. But if you want to know more about that, look it up on the internet, the Tiamat theory, and you will see a lot of interesting stuff. Yeah, it connects the Sumer stories on the clay tablets with this planet Xilantia mentioned by the Dogon. So, what is so important about 60 years? Well, every 60 years from this planet seen, they are aligned. They are at the same spot. And only then there is a day and a night, because otherwise there is a star on one side and a star on the other side, and there is light. Yeah, you don't have darkness. But only once every 60 years, a magical thing happens, just like a solar eclipse from our perspective. Both stars are at the same spot. And that is celebrated by this festival. And the Dogon took that up and are still doing it. So this is the great yearly time. Yeah, here you see the eons, but they go in a different order. Yeah, they go in the other way around. Yeah, precession. So we have silver age, gold, and another silver. This is the top of the sine wave. Yeah, this is the light period. Then we have bronze, iron, and bronze again. This is the downside, yeah, the valley, if you like, of the sine wave. And we just passed this point. Yeah, we left the dark period of the Iron Age. Yeah, our consciousness was generally rather low, and we believed so many things. Yeah, Pisces, the theme of Pisces is I believe. We believe the politicians, we believe the newsreaders, we believe the house doctors, we believe the bankers, we believe the judges. Should I go on? We all believed that what they were telling was the truth. And now we are breaking free from all that. We said, yeah, you can have your own opinion, you can have your own view. I have an alternative view. And my view is just as good as your view. Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'm going to continue with my view. That is what is happening now. Yeah, we are breaking free from Pisces because we have entered Aquarius. And Aquarius is an air sign. We want to think, we want to know. We want to know it ourselves. We no longer build our house on what other people tell us. That's a major shift that is going on right now. No one can tell us what is true or false. We will make that up for ourselves. Actually, it's our own, it is only human, I think. If you depend on others, I think you're mentally lazy. Yeah, it's not that complicated. Everybody can understand how things work. And to think that others will think for you, I think it's very risky. Yeah, people have took injections in their body because somebody told them that that was a good thing to do. Make up your own mind, I would say. At the bottom of this sine wave, almost everyone is spiritually asleep. And at the top of this sine wave, maybe almost everyone is spiritually awake. And that's the process. It's a very slow process. So here in the Golden Age, we had a very advanced society. Yeah, the stories of Atlantis, I think they are true. Yeah, because Atlantis disappeared around here at the end of the Golden Age. Yeah, so let's now connect this, the third dimension of time, with what has been built on the Giza plateau. You see three relatively large pyramids. This is the largest one. This is equally large almost, but this one is a bit tinier, a bit smaller. But next to those three, there were other pyramids as well. Tiny pyramids, if you like. Yeah, some of them are not in their original shape, so let's rebuild them a little bit. Yeah, I make this one a little bit more nice, and that one too. So here you see three smaller pyramids next to the smallest greater pyramid. And also here, you can't see it now, there's just some rumble there, but there used to be a small pyramid as well. And next to the biggest one, yeah, you can see them here. Only this one is more or less intact. The others are degenerated, if you like, or crumbled down. There were three, and even a smaller one next to it. So that's what was Gary saying in the introduction. There are 11 pyramids on the Giza plateau. Yeah, that's what we see here. This is a reconstruction. And the Nile was much closer to the pyramids as it is now because it's migrating slowly to the east. But that's also another lecture. Yeah, so you see the smaller pyramids here. This is the tiniest one. There's a tiny one. And there are three as well. Yeah, this pyramid officially has been made by Pharaoh Khufu. At least that's what the Egyptologist wants us to believe. I think that's equally silly as claiming that Robin of Locksley, aka Robin Hood, built Stonehenge. Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. These things were there for long, and the Egyptians created their own culture around these beautiful buildings. That's the truth, to me. So there's another big one, and then there is a smaller big one, if you like. But these three are all relatively big. Here are three smaller ones. Yeah, a tiny one there. Can you see the animations? Yeah, one here, and another one is there. 11 in total. So let's only see the contours now. And we ignore the bigger ones, we only focus on the tiny ones. How many you see on the left? No, we ignore the bigger one, I said. 3. How many you will see here? And how many we see here? Does it ring a bell? Let me give you a clue. Indeed. It's the start of the strange number of pi. And pi is, of course, a reference to a circle. So why did we get this clue? Yeah, why were those smaller pyramids built? To give us the idea that we have to think in a circle. Not linear, but circular, in cycles. Because this is about the great year cycle, the 12 eons. And the clue they gave us is a little bit more complicated than that because it has to do with the belt of Orion. Yeah, these three are in the belt of the warrior Orion. And as I showed in the beginning, when you take a line from here to there, you end up with Sirius. So this is Sirius, or actually Sirius A and B. You can't see B. And yeah, so if you look at the night sky, it's easy to find Sirius if you can see Orion. It's a doddle. So we zoom in now on those stars of Orion and just give you an idea how big they are. Yeah, everything is way bigger than we can imagine. This one, Betelgeuse, is 950 times the diameter of our own sun. Our own sun is already huge, but this is almost unbelievably big. Yeah, then we move to this star, Anditak, sorry, about 20 times bigger than Helios. And this one is a little bit the same. Scythe is 22 times. Yeah, I will go a little bit faster here. This one is relatively big. This is Rigel. Rigel is 78 times bigger than our own sun. Yeah, I'm talking about the diameter, not about the volume, but you have an idea. This one is relatively small, Mintaka, only 1.6. So it's in between Helios and Sirius, if you talk about the diameter. And this one is also rather big, again, Bellatrix, yeah, 5.7 times bigger than our own sun. But it also looks a bit like an hourglass, if you can see this. Yeah, also a reference to time, but we picture it as a man standing with a spear or a shield. Yeah, the warrior, Orion. Let's have an idea of how big everything really is. Yeah, we are living on this planet, beautiful planet called Terra. This is her size compared to Helios. Can you imagine? It's 10 times, 11 times bigger than our diameter. This is the biggest planet, Jupiter, and Saturn is a little bit smaller, but has huge rings around him. Yeah, so when we put Jupiter in front of the sun Helios, it fits in 10 times. So the diameter of the sun is 10 times the diameter of Jupiter. That's already huge. Yeah, this is gigantic. And if we compare Jupiter with our planet, yeah, it's 11 times. So this is an ongoing hurricane. Yeah, permanent. But it's bigger than our own planet. It's incredibly big. Yeah, but everything can be much bigger, because now we will go to the stars of Orion. Yeah, for instance, this is Rigel here, but here Rigel is relative to the sun Helios and to Sirius. Yes, I said Sirius is about twice as big in diameter. This is 78 times bigger than Helios. So this is huge, it's gigantic. But if we compare Rigel with Betelgeuse, then it even gets stronger, but because Rigel is now this, and this is then Betelgeuse. So if you have an idea of how big is, this is gigantic. Yeah, just for fun, to get an idea what we talk about. Okay, we zoom now in on the belt of Orion, these three stars. Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka. Yeah, Alnilam is the middle one. This one, as we already saw, was much smaller than that. And that is, of course, why they are built as pyramids, but this one is quite smaller than that one. As above, so below. Yeah, so here we see them again. And now we put the pyramids under the stars, and you see it's a perfect match. Yeah, of course, it's an interpretation how big this is. But yeah, this is the smallest of the three, and the light is also smallest. So it makes sense to me. Yeah, and also the angle. This is not a straight line. There is a kind of bending. So that is what has been built on the Giza plateau, the Orion's belt. But why? Why is Orion so important? Yeah, let's go again to rebuilding everything. There's a small pyramid here. There's a small one there. Yeah, they're all gone now. And where are we now with the animation? Oh yeah, this is the big one. Yeah, I simply put red lines around each pyramid so that we can see it more clearly. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a circle that is there. And I really would like to go to Egypt, to Cairo, to this place, and make the circle and put signs there, because I think the tourists would like to know what was built there. But there's something more. Yeah, maybe you've seen my presentation on YouTube where I explain all this, but this is new. I've not talked about that before. Yeah, this is the Sphinx, by the way. And that's here. There is an entrance here. And if you enter, yeah, you cannot enter it anymore because it's locked now. There's irons in front. But this is called the Tomb of the Birds. It's a very important tomb. And it is exactly at the same latitude as the center of the Great Pyramid. Yeah, this is a picture of it. You can search it on internet. Yeah, the Tomb of the Birds. And some men went there. This is, yeah, you can make this triangle. It's not, but it goes exactly to the middle of the bigger pyramid in the middle, and it touches these smaller pyramids exactly at the corner, and then goes straight up. Yeah, so this triangle can be made always, but I'm going to show you a circle, and the circle is very special. Yeah, that circle touches this point here, the entrance to the tomb. It touches there the smaller pyramid, yeah, also the big pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and it goes round and it touches one here at the corner as well. So this is very fascinating. There is a circle hidden on the Giza plateau. And the man who visited this tomb, you recognize him? Alexander the Great, yes. And he visited because he heard a rumor, he heard an idea, and that's indeed what he found. Yeah, we've talked about Gnostic writings before, but this is what Alexander the Great found here, the Emerald Tablet. It's an ancient Phoenician script, but if you decipher it, it's all about Hermetic knowledge or Hermetic science, if you like. Yeah, as above, so below. All those things are written here. Very fascinating. Yeah, for instance, here, the king's chamber, there is a sarcophagus, and Julius Caesar spent the night there. Yeah, not the least. Napoleon spent the night there, and it altered their understanding. So there is something very remarkable about this, and I think we're only about scratching the surface of what can be found here. Yeah, I just wanted to mention this, the Emerald Tablet. Okay, what we see here is all the planets go round and around, but that's simply because we go round in a natural day time, in 24 hours. Except one. Yeah, when we look up for long, or we have a camera, we put it on still for long, we see that all the stars are making a kind of orbit, except one. Oh, going in the wrong direction here. Sorry. Except one, and that's this one. Yeah, this Polaris. Yeah, if you look at the Big Dipper, where is it? You can see that the edge is pointing towards this all the time. That's the current situation. Polaris is now right above us. So we go round, and there is Polaris. But actually, we go round a bit like this. I'm not sure if I can do it correctly, because the axis is not straight up. It's tilted about 23.4 degrees, 0.4 degrees. That is at the moment. But about 13,000 years ago, the direction of the axis was not tilted in this way, but all the way the other side. Yeah, that was what I showed, the going around of the axis. So this was in the Golden Age period. And this is what recently happened in 2012. Yeah, let's say it didn't happen, of course, but these are the two extremes of the cycle. So this is one way, and that is the other way. And then it migrates from one to the other in the in-between time. And that is depicted at the Giza plateau. So we have here 2012. Yeah, that's the northeast corner of the Great Pyramid. And there at the other side is about 11,000 years before our current era, BCE. So this is a clock. The Clock of Giza, I called it. But it's a clock that shows the third dimension of time, the great yearly time. Yeah, I now reverse it. Oh, let me explain this. Oh, that's going the other way. Excuse me. I'm spoiling myself. Oh, sorry. That will come later if you have some time with me. The orientation here is to the south. That was how the ancient Egyptians looked at their country. Yeah, they were facing south. That's why the south is Upper Egypt and the north is Lower Egypt. Yeah, it's facing the sun. That's respectful. We orient towards the north, which is a bit silly, in my opinion. But anyway, I reverse it here. Yeah, so now we're facing north. Yeah, north is now up and south is down. And now we can see the meaning of these three. Yeah, because maybe I was too quick here. The Orion constellation is turned here. Yeah, here you see the belt of Orion horizontally, and here you see the belt vertically. So that's the change, yeah, in time. Orion is rising like this as a man standing. As a man lying down. Yeah, so the belt is vertical, And here he is rising as a man standing, so the belt is horizontal. Sorry for the... Is this clear, or this is an essential part of the story? Yeah, so Orion is making a shift of about 90 degrees when we go around in that great yearly time cycle. And that is depicted here. So here we have the belt vertical, and there is the belt horizontal. That's the hint we got. So this is where we live now. Yeah, the belt is horizontal, so Orion is standing up. And that's also how we see Orion in the night sky. Yeah, more or less straight up. And it was totally different then. Then it was resting, lying down. And it has everything to do with consciousness. Yeah, waking up. But what do I mean when I talk about waking up? There are actually two dimensions involved. What I call this dimension, I name it societally awake. Yeah, awakening in the society, understanding that things as they were not really true, were a bit deceitful. Yeah, what I talked about, the house doctors, the governments, the news media, and so on. Yeah, we were gullible. Everyone who is still in one is gullible. Yeah, believes what they are told. And I assume that most people who come to a conference like this are already in two. Yeah, there's a big trick going on. There are many, many tricks going on. Already some of them have been said here as well. But the whole thing about woke has nothing to do with really awake. People who talk about woke are still societally asleep. Yeah, they are fully played by the propaganda. Yeah, it's another trick to keep people busy, because that's the best way to control them. Yeah, if you're really societally awake, then you can see through all the deception. Yeah, because you start to think for yourself. You take responsibility for your own knowing, your own understanding. And you let anyone or anything inspire you, but you keep the responsibility to yourself to check it or to see if it's logical. That's the big step here. Yeah, a lot of talks today were about two. Yeah, I liked Richard in the morning. Richard talked about how he got from 1 to 2. That's actually what he was telling us when he held the briefcase like this. I can't do it like he did, but it was very, very revealing. And that's a process everybody should go through, I think. But the second dimension is way more important, in my opinion. And that's called spiritually awakening. Yeah, awakening inside. This is more outside. This is inside. Many people are still worried about what is going outside. But if you wake up spiritually, you will understand that you are the creator of your own world, your own reality. People try to scare you. People try to tell you all kinds of things. I'm not saying they're not true, but what you see is what you get. When you go along with that, then that is what you will see. So we have incredible potential. We are magicians. We are sorcerers, but we forgot about it. In the golden age, people knew that. People were able to manifest immediately, to create. But we lost that capacity. But it's still in us. The potential is still in us if we are not too much damaged by everything. But phase 3 is important because you realize that you are asleep. Yeah, it's like you're dreaming physically, you're in bed, and you realize in your dream, hey, this is just a dream. Yeah, who of you had that experience, that when you dream, you realize that you are dreaming? Yeah. And then the whole thing changes. Then you can say to yourself, well, if this is a dream, then I can do this. Yeah, once I said to myself, okay, if this is a dream, then I can fly. And I flew. Imagine like Neo in the Matrix. It's all possible if you realize that. And that is happening here. You realize that this seems to be the reality, but it's only an illusion. It's a very tacit illusion, but it's an illusion in the sense that we are not who we really are. That's what we remember here. Or we remember that we are not who we are. And then we can go to the next phase and become awake. spiritually awake. Then you open innerly your eyes. And that is what my life's work is all about, bringing people from 3 to 4. I call it holy science, the science of the whole. Yeah, it's the reunion of genuine science, I call it sound science, and solid spirituality. Because they are two sides of the same coin, but they were taken apart in the 17th century. And the church says we have the dominion about spirituality, and the university said we have the dominion about science. And now we get twice rubbish, if I can be so honest to you. Yeah, what the universities are selling is indeed soulless. It's not helping us to understand the purpose of life, not at all. But what is sold on the spiritual side is also bollocks. Yeah, people are said, you can believe what anything you want to believe, yeah? Pick what you like. If it feels right for you, then that's the way you should go forward. No, that's not real spirituality. That's keeping people asleep. Yeah, real spirituality is hard work. It's confronting. You have to deal with a lot of issues. You have to break free from old patterns. That's not easy. It's very hard. But that's something you will never hear in spiritual conferences. They only want to make you happy and make you go out with a big smile. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to give you a big smile today, but I want to share how I see it. Yeah, if you want to know more about holy science, then visit my website, plateau.nl. I developed a 7-level training course, an education course, with a lot of video material, with a lot of books. Yeah, one book is available at the table. It's a little bit of a misprint because the Greek letters are not printed. Somehow the drivers were not right. But you can buy it there if you want. Yeah, and contact me if you want to have the ebook and the videos as well. So that's what the Giza clock is all about. Helping us remember that we have amnesia. Helping us remember that there is much more possible. Breaking free from the old paradigm where everything has been simplified and has been ridiculed, actually. There is a higher power, there is unity, there is purpose, but only if you want to see it. If you think that life is meaningless, you're right, because that's what you have done to your life. If you feel or believe or whatever, if you want to find purpose, then you're also right, because you will find purpose. And the harder you try, the more purposeful it will become. That's why we are here. We have to somehow remember what is there to know. And most of all, remember who we really are. So that is the clock of Giza. Yeah, and you see now the circle of Sirius as well. And when you put it in the middle, overlapping, this is a symbol called the Ichthus. Yeah, it's related to Christianity. Many Christian people have this on the back of their car. Yeah, but this is actually showing the sign of Pisces. Yeah, I cannot go too far. Where am I? Here. Yeah, the New Testament is about Pisces, and the Old Testament is about Aries. And we have just entered Aquarius. So maybe we need a third testament, who knows? There is much more meaning in everything, but all we need to do is open up and forget everything that we have been taught, because most of it was propaganda. Life is not what we think it is or what is being said to us. We are children of light consciousness. We can create, we can make this world totally different. And we indeed have a role to play, as said before, in relation to this planet. But only if our consciousness is high enough. If you do this with a low consciousness, you're only fooling yourself. So first work on yourself. First bring your consciousness to a higher level, and then you can fulfill the role that is meant for us. That's my take on the current situation. Thank you very much, and now it's time for questioning. Is there anyone who has a question? And where's the mic? Oh, yeah.
Hello. I remember reading a few months ago about a 13th month and star sign. So if you calculate the 28 days times 13, it comes out pretty much a year. So what's your comments there?
It's a lot of disinformation, Ian. Yeah, we get so much disinformation. No, it's 12. Yeah, they call it the snake bearer. And I know all that story, but it's nonsense. Yeah, there are so many paths you can get lost in. Remember the film Neo, and it has been mentioned by one of the previous speaker too. Neo in the film The Matrix. Yeah, he goes down the rabbit hole. But if you go down the rabbit hole, you can keep going down the rest of your life, and you end up in all kinds of tunnels and all kinds of ways, and you will never get out of it. What is needed is discernment. Discernment between wheat and chaff, between truth and falsehood. Yeah, how to do that? Trust your inner voice. That's how I do it. But then go look for evidence, look for facts, look for logic. The truth, when you see it, is always evident. Yeah, it's self-evident. Then you know, oh, it's like it's a resonance. Yeah, it's like you remember it. That's how I see it. And then it's easy to discern. But when you get confused by all those stories that are out there, and the CIA plays a big part in this, that's what I'm pretty sure of. Because we are easily fooled. Yeah, we're gullible. Most people are mentally lazy. They don't want to do all the thinking themselves. They like to hear a story and then they think, oh, that's interesting. And then they go along without doing the real research that is required. So sorry, Ian, there's no 13th sign. There are 88 constellations from our perspective, because we draw lines between stars and we say, wow, that looks like a Big Dipper, or that looks like a whatever. Yeah, it's all arbitrary. But the zodiac, the path that the sun is traveling in front, is divided in 12 equal parts of 30 arc seconds.
Johan, I'm going to burn some time off my presentation because a lot of people are kind of interested in you at the moment. So you keep going and I'll pass the mic around.
You're the chairman, so...
Hello, Johan. Thank you. It's very inspiring. Thank you. Would you say the same thing about the flat Earth subject?
You have no idea how many people are going to me there. I gave a presentation in Denmark, Open Mind Conference, Copenhagen. One of us was also present there. I'm not sure where you're sitting at the moment. And I got the same question. Please do your own research. Yeah, I don't want to insult anyone, so I will not say anything harsh, but do your own research. That's what I want to say. And to me, it's very striking that all those videos that are made by those flat Earth believers are very advanced. They're way more professional than my videos. So to me, that's a red flag. But it's all up to you to do your own research. Yeah, the science behind it is rubbish. Yeah, and maybe add a little bit to it. Yeah, it's because NASA indeed is never a straight answer, or not a space agency. So NASA is lying big time. That's true. But it doesn't mean that you can jump to any conclusion. That's the pitfall. And that's what most people do. They want to jump to conclusions because then they can sit down and go to Netflix again. No. It's if you want to know the truth, it's a lifetime of research that is needed. Inside and outside.
Thank you, Johan. Are you able to comment on Tiamat and the stories in the Sumerian tablets?
The first word I didn't hear.
Are you able to comment on Tiamat, the planet
Tiamat? Oh, I call it Tiamat. Sorry.
Tiamat. And the relevance with some of the stories from the Sumerian tablets?
Yes, I can. Yeah, as I showed in the presentation, what the Dogon people called Xilantia is what I call Tiamat. But Xilantia is no longer there. I think something happened with, I want to point, but there's nothing to point. I think something happened to Sirius C. And that a huge explosion of energy came, and that planet was somehow blown away and got into our solar system. But that's not science, it's a theory I have. I call it the Tiamat theory, so I cannot prove this. But I think that water world, because Tiamat was a planet covered all the way with water, yeah, our planet about 70%, but that planet was totally covered with water, came into our reality. And that planet eventually had a collision, with electricity and a lot of energy with Jupiter. So Tiamat was destroyed. And all those water parts became gigantic ice meteors, and a lot of them rained down on this planet. Yeah, the Nomos called the Nomo the aquatic people. Yeah, they were described as let's call it dolphin and semi-human. And I think it makes a lot of sense. I think we have a lot of in common. Yeah, most people think that, yeah, his name was mentioned already, and Darwin. We have nothing in common with apes. We have much more in common with dolphins. Yeah, apes don't like to swim as we do. We have something with water. When we go in water, something happens, something magical. So there's much more to this story, but what we must do is we forget everything that has been told us, and then we start afresh with a clean slate and try to make sense out of everything.
Testing. Here we are. Johan, just can you clarify? There's some people would say that September is named after Sept 7, and October is Oct 8.
Yes.
That they're the 9th and 10th month.
Yes, 9. November is 9, and decimal is 10. So that has to do with what was the first month. And when we go back to the ancient Roman calendar, the Julian calendar, the first month was what we now call March. So March was 1, April was 2. So that's where it's coming from.
Yeah. Why was it changed?
What did it change?
Yeah. Why?
Yeah, I think because eventually, yeah, it's logical to start in March because that's the, let's say, the month of spring. And the cycle starts with spring, the yearly cycle, spring, summer, autumn, and then winter. So it's logical to start in March. But as I showed here, I think we remember that Sirius is very important. So our yearly calendar, yeah, most people don't like the Gregorian calendar, but it is also an homage to Sirius because January 1 is the alignment with Sirius. So that's why. Originally, March was 1. That's where the counting is still coming from. Yeah, Aprilis, and yeah, I will not go into that, but you can all look it up. And then we had 2 extra months. And that's why February has an extra day. The extra day in a leap year comes at the end. And the old end was February. So it makes sense, I think. Are you satisfied? Oh, you don't have the mic anymore. Yeah.
Any more questions?
I've been experimenting with water and pyramids, and run about 12 months ago, they found a lake under the main Giza pyramid, and down there were granite chairs the priest used to sit on, and I think it's 52 degrees on the pyramid, and it structurally changes water, and we know that there was more water on the pyramids in the past. And so what's your experience with the pyramids and the shapes and water? What's the significance in this? I think it's a spring which is under the main pyramid.
Yeah, this is a huge question. There's so much to say about this, but let's talk about the shape of the pyramid. Everybody can do this. Yeah, you can make with wood or whatever material you want. You make the shape of a pyramid. And then, for instance, you put a razor blade that is no longer sharp in it. And then wait a week and then take it out. And you will see it's sharp again. So there is something magical going on. The energy in the shape of the pyramid is magical and it can do things. Yeah, I know people who meditate in that structure. Yeah, they feel that they get levitated. They're not really levitated, but it feels like they're going up. Water is very important. It's water and fire. So fire is above, water is under. And I think in ancient times, the Atlantean times, they knew how to make electricity that way. And I think that's also one of the theories, that it was a power plant, an electricity generator, if you like.
Okay, so 2 more questions. Theo?
Yes, in your previous slide where you have those 4 boxes, and you're saying that right now we're in number 1.
I didn't say that. Some people are in 1.
Okay.
Yeah, this one.
But this is all to do with time, isn't it? And what I wanted to ask you if I may, is, I mean, is there going to be, would there be a natural progression to 4 if we waited a couple of thousand years? And if that is the case, how is it we can jump that couple of thousand years and be in 4, now-ish?
It starts with first understanding the natural principles of everything. Yeah, now it's getting close to 6 p.m. How is our energy compared to 9 a.m. this morning? Yeah, it's different or not? Are you getting tired, or still can I go on for long? Yeah,
We can do one more question.
yeah, I know, but I'm trying to make a point. Yeah, the energies change during the day, and that's a natural process, and we need to understand that. Yeah, when I went there last night, many people, and it was gathering. When I looked out this morning before we start, totally nothing. Yeah, so the dynamics changes with the time. Yeah, the relative time, the time in each dimension. So here in the Iron Age, most people were in the first quadrant. Yeah, but all of us somehow woke up. I think somehow we realized, yeah, COVID did a good help here. Most people think this is insane. There is no real proof, and now suddenly we're in a lockdown, and all things are gone. What is going on? People were forced to open their eyes. So the government pushed a lot of people into 2. But that's not the end station. Yeah, it's important that you realize the difference between 1 and 2, but then know that we are destined for something much bigger than that. Yeah, we can live in a totally different way together with the rest of all the living creatures on this planet. But first we need to innerly wake up.
Okay, chaps and chapesses, we'll call it 6 o'clock. We'll all come back. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you so much.